Are you looking for ways to strengthen your marriage? Would you like to raise children you enjoy being around? Do you long for a peaceful, orderly home that's a blessing to everyone who comes through its doors? Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jennifer Flanders, a Bible-believing, homeschooling mother to 12 and host of the Loving Life at Home podcast. Join me as we discover what God's Word has to say about marriage, motherhood, and minding the things that matter most. Hello, friend. Welcome to episode 111 of Loving Life at Home. I have a fun challenge for you today, but before I explain what it is, I want to tell you what I've been up to this past week. Last Thursday, April 23rd, marked the 40-year anniversary of the day I met my husband. That life-changing event occurred less than 24 hours after he turned 19 and about 48 hours after I turned 21. And so historically, Doug takes that full week off every year so we can go somewhere to celebrate our birthdays and that special anniversary. We normally take the kids along with us, but this year he scheduled some continuing medical education classes in New Orleans that week. And since the only rooms available had a single king-size bed, the two of us ended up going alone. In 39 years of marriage, I'm pretty sure this was only the fourth or fifth time we've ever taken a trip without the kids. The first was for a marriage retreat that our church sponsored. Unbeknownst to us, though, we had separate accommodations for that weekend away. Not very romantic. All the men bunked in one cabin and all their wives shared a different cabin. Doug and I ended up going home early so that we could enjoy some privacy. The second trip the two of us took alone was for a 3-day blogging conference I attended in Florida. I think that was about our 30th anniversary, so 9 years ago. And my husband came as my plus one. The third time we were on a trip without the kids was for a physicians conference that he attended in Denver, Colorado. But unfortunately, his group made all their arrangements, which meant we ended up flying on separate planes and taking separate taxis to the hotel. But we did get to spend a few days together there when he was not in meetings. Doug surprised me with a night at the Emma Hotel in San Antonio last Christmas, but I don't know if that should really count as a solo trip or not, since most of our kids, including the married ones, were with us for that whole week in San Antonio. But they all stayed at the Airbnb that we had rented for the occasion while we checked into the Emma for 24 hours. They even came by a couple of times while we were dining at a little French restaurant in the historic Pearl District and shared our appetizers and desserts. My husband was a little disappointed that I didn't act more excited about that surprise when he sprung it on me, so I planned a surprise of my own for him a few months later in the form of a weekend trip to Shreveport. That trip was a little bit of a bust. Shreveport is famous for its casinos, but we don't gamble, so that was no attraction for us. And the quaint little shopping district that I remembered from a prior trip was a virtual ghost town, as 95% of the shops went out of business during the COVID pandemic. However, our hotel was lovely, and we enjoyed stopping on the way at an alligator farm where we were able to pet and feed Highland cows and alpacas and all sorts of other exotic animals. So I guess maybe the New Orleans trip last weekend was the sixth trip, provided you count that marriage retreat with segregated accommodations and the date night in San Antonio in the middle of a week-long family vacation. We had a wonderful time, though, in New Orleans. While he attended anesthesia lectures in the morning, I stayed in the room to read and write and crochet. And then once he was done with his classes for the day, we'd eat lunch together and spend afternoons sightseeing. We visited the botanical gardens and Storyland and rode the miniature train around City Park. We drove out to Oak Alley Plantation and enjoyed the beautiful grounds and manicured gardens and historic home tour there. We strolled along the riverfront and visited Jackson Square, and we enjoyed fabulous food at every turn: French cuisine, Honduran fare, Mediterranean meals, and Mexican food, all top-notch. I'll link a few of the photos in today's show notes in case you're curious. But as wonderful and refreshing as this trip was, and as glad as I am that we took it, we both found ourselves thinking a lot about our kids while we were away and seeing things that we wish that we could share with them. And that makes me so grateful that we've taken the vast majority of our trips over the past 4 decades with children in tow. They grow up and leave home so fast, and we could never get back that opportunity to make so many rich memories together if we'd been traveling solo during all those intervening years. If the Lord tarries and our health holds out, I suspect we will have a lot more opportunities for just the two of us trips in our not so distant future. We may not have any other choice once our last few fledglings leave the nest and fly away. Fortunately, there are lots of ways to nurture your marriage that don't require nights away or extended hotel stays. I'll link a few suggestions in the show notes to get you started. Date night ideas, even for spouses who prefer to stay home, helpful marriage book recommendations, and free printable do not disturb signs for your bedroom door. I'll also include links for my 30-day respect challenge for wives and Doug's 30-day love challenge for husbands. Several years ago, a women's ministry I love and have found to be such a blessing through the years, Revive Our Hearts, contacted me about turning my book, 25 Ways to Communicate Respect, into a 30-day challenge. I enthusiastically agreed and provided the 5 extra days worth of material that they requested, then waited eagerly for their design team to get everything else ready. Once it went live, I immediately signed up, wanting to experience the challenge myself and thinking it would be a nice review. At least on a subconscious level, I imagined myself being able to check off each day's challenge. After all, I wrote the book. It should be old hat by now, right? If you're anything like me, you might think, after having spent more than a quarter of a century together, which was the case when this challenge was first published, and nearly 39 years together now, that by that time a couple should have this marriage thing down pat. You might think that most of the hard work would be behind you, that maybe you and your husband should just be able to coast through the rest of your marriage with the wind on your faces, enjoying the view. You might also think that writing books on love and respect would so cement these concepts into my mind that I'd no longer struggle with them myself. But if you thought any of those things, like I'm prone to do in my naivety, you'd be wrong. Marriage is like riding a bike. You can only coast for so long before losing momentum and falling over. You've got to keep pedaling and investing energy if you don't want to crash. Well, that fact became abundantly clear when the first day's challenge was delivered to my inbox bright and early one Sunday morning so long ago. It took all of 60 seconds to read the email, but it brought with it something that I wasn't really expecting. Conviction. Not initially, but within an hour of reading it. I checked my email before church and found the first day's challenge waiting for me. Choose joy. Been there, done that. I'm naturally a happy person, so I marked that off my list and moved on. Flash forward 45 minutes, and I was sitting at the breakfast table in a local bagel cafe listening to my husband recount how he had fed our goldfish before we left for church that morning. At the time, we had an unusually friendly goldfish named Gil who lived in a bowl on the ledge behind our kitchen sink. He would swim to our side of the bowl every time anybody came into the kitchen, wagging his little tail like a puppy and begging for food. My husband especially found that behavior impossible to resist. But unbeknownst to Doug, I had already fed the fish when I first got up that morning, and I'd changed out the water in his fish bowl too. And so when Doug told me that he had fed him, I immediately began quizzing him on how many pellets he had dropped into the bowl. And I reminded him that if he gives the fish more than 3 or 4 at a time, they sink to the bottom faster than Gil can eat them. And I tried to explain that when food sits in the bottom of the bowl, it turns the water murky, which means I have to change it every other day instead of only once or twice a week. Can you sense what was happening there? I was getting testy over 4 extra flakes of fish food. My sweet husband had been as generous with the fish as he is with all the people in his life, and I was letting that fact threaten to steal my joy. That's how easily I'm tripped up at times. Can you imagine? But fortunately for all of us, that first day's challenge was fresh on my mind, and it helped me to recognize the situation for what it truly was, an opportunity to choose joy, a chance to practice what I preach, a moment that called for grace and love and respect and thankfulness. And so midway into my exasperated lecture on the proper way to feed a fish, I stopped and chose to laugh instead. I smiled at my husband and told him how much I love him. Our family had an absolutely wonderful day worshiping together, sharing meals, and fellowshipping with dear friends. And guess what? The fishbowl still looked crystal clear when we got back home. It's been a few years since I worked my way through that 30-day respect challenge, but thinking over the positive effect that it had the first time I went through it, I plan to do it again during the month of May. I suspect it will once more prove to be a great time of growth for me and blessing for my husband. Want to join me? You can register for the email challenge using the link in today's show notes. It's free. If you'd like more than a 60-second synopsis of each chapter, you might prefer to buy the book. It's available in paperback, digital, and audio forms. The Word of God is full of wisdom for every facet of life, but we've found it especially helpful in building a happy, healthy marriage. For a fascinating look at how science has confirmed the superiority of God's design, check out my book, Love Your Husband, Love Yourself. Follow the show note links for more about any or all of these resources. Thanks so much for joining me today. Leave a comment and let me know if you decide to join me for that 30-day respect challenge. As always, I hope it will be an encouragement to you, and I pray that God will richly bless all your efforts to build a loving home life centered on Him. Thanks so much for listening today. If you have a question you'd like to hear covered on this podcast, message me on Instagram at Flanders_family or contact me through my website, lovinglifeathome.com. Before you go, if you've been encouraged by something you've heard on the show, do me a favor and forward the link to a friend or head over to Loving Life at Home on Apple iTunes to subscribe and leave a written review of the show. Your doing so will help others find me so they can listen too. Until next time, I pray the Lord will bless your efforts to build a loving home life centered on Him.